Today, the Tour says Auf Wiedersehen to Germany and returns to France. No longer will the hardcore duels of the sprinters dominate the stages, as a journey into the Vosges Mountains will test the nerves of the contenders. Perhaps Alexander Vinokurov will renew his aggressive tactics, or maybe some home-cooking rejuvenated Jan Ullrich's form. Whoever makes their move, it is a day of eternal vigilance for Lance Armstrong and Team Discovery, and a day of opportunity for everyone else. Stage 8 of the 2005 Tour de France is next on OLN. By the end of the day, the riders in the Tour de France will have covered a massive 460 kilometres in 2 days of cycling. They've gone into Germany, they've turned their backs on Germany, they're racing home to France today. It's a long day, the rain is awaiting them at the finishing line, but for the moment at least, out on course, they're racing through the valley of the River Rhine, and it's dry. Well, we're ready here in Gerardmer, and the rain has just gone away, and everybody is outside swabbing up after the storm. Hi everybody, and welcome back to our coverage of the Tour de France. Phil Liggett along with Paul Sherwen. Paul, it's the first weekend of the mountains. They are quite stiff climbs, chance to test everybody.
Well, that's the important thing. Over the first few days of racing, everybody can sit in the main field and get sucked along, but once you get to the mountains for the first time, Lance Armstrong, I think, finally has a chance to see which of his rivals really are on form.
Well, let's find out. Jan Ullrich, the rival, the man has finished second to Lance Armstrong on 3 occasions, and he's won the race, of course, once when Lance wasn't around. Ullrich is still to prove he's got the legs to run him close again. Ivan Basso, he's sitting at the moment in 9th place, a minute and 26 seconds down. Will he be the contender? He's shown Lance in the mountains last year he can beat him and steal the honours. Lance had to calm him down, he finished third. And Alexander Vinokurov, he currently is third at 1 minute 2 seconds.
The invader, this is the man that takes the risks whenever he can, and he may well spoil the party for Basso and Jan Ullrich, because he's the kind of bike rider who looks out on the course for any opportunity, and when there's an opportunity for the man from Kazakhstan, Phil, I have to tell you, he reaches out and he grabs it by the neck and takes it at all costs.
Well, he stole 19 seconds the other day. Lance Armstrong's reported to be very annoyed with himself for allowing him to do that today. He might well come out in time and take on the action. The green jersey competition, that takes a back seat for a little while now. And in fact, as I speak, Tom Bonen has been dropped by the peloton today. So we're going to talk about the other classification now, the climbing classification. Here it is. The race's biggest climbs are categorised 8C for outside category, or 1, 2, 3 or 4. 4 is the lowest, 8C, of course, is the highest. On each of these climbs, you accumulate points. The harder the climb, the more you get, and the further down the riders over the top, the points go. So, and don't forget too, very important this, when an HC1 or 2 climb is the final climb of the day, the points are double, so the rider's aiming for the big payout there. The rider with the highest mountains points tally, he wears the polka dot jersey on a daily basis. And this morning it was Fabian Wegmann. Now let's have a look how these points are available to us today, brought to us by AMD. There are 4 third category climbs. They're all behind us now. They were very soon after the start today. Right at the end today, a 2nd category climb, first one of this year's tour, and 20, 18, 16, 14, 12 and 10, because those points are doubled today. So let's have a look then as how the race has gone today, because it's been a very active day. At the start this morning, there were 183 riders. Christophe Manjon, who cracked rather Monty, has not started. Lance Armstrong rolling gently away at the head of the affairs. Then soon after the start, there was a breakaway. George Hincapie was part of it.
Well, Hincapie very attentive for Team Discovery Channel, joining in there with Jens Voigt. So obviously Team CSC had a bit of a plan very early on, but the man that everyone was being very attentive on was a man who rides for the Dutch Rabobank team, Rasmussen. He got himself maximum points on the first climb of the day. I think he had a plan. He was looking. In fact, he told Rolf Sorensen, a former professional bike rider, before the start, he was going to get points. He did exactly the same thing, Phil, on the second climb of the day.
Still clear, only a minute 40 ahead of the peloton here on the Col de Bad ahead of Zope. 27 kilometres covered, then at 38 kilometres covered with a lead of 1.5 minutes. He was there again, his time beating Jens Voigt. And then at the fourth climb, the Côte de Zimmerplaat, he got the maximum points of those early climbs. So he is the leader of the King of the Mountains on the road. As they approached the first sprint at 64 kilometres at Sasbach, they shook hands. He went back to the peloton. George Hincapie stole the small time bonus, pinching the 6 seconds on the line and stopping anybody else getting the advantage against his team captain back in the pack, Lance Armstrong. Still clear, but only just. T-Mobile were having things to say. They were chasing down everybody.
I think they were taken a little bit by surprise by the attack of George Hincapie and, of course, the fact that in that group as well was Jens Voigt. These three guys all of a sudden realized the reason they were chasing down was because of the presence of Hincapie and Voigt, so they let Sandy Cassar take off alone.
So Sandy Cassar went off on his own at the main field, wrapped in the rest of the race. Just one rider out in front, and then Fabian Cancellara decided to get up the road and join him. Coming off the pack just behind him was Nicky Sorensen for CSC. Clearly today, CSC have got themselves a plan. So three riders form at the front when they picked up Sandy Cassar, and this was with 106 kilometres still to go. The riders now racing towards the borders of Germany with France.
Then all of a sudden a man with a pair of green shorts turned up. This was Thor Hushoff. Now he was obviously thinking about the possibility of getting some of the intermediary sprint points, because Tom Bonen, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, was already a long way behind.
The white jersey of best man in the rookie competition was Jaroslav Popovic. He was spending time talking to Johan Brunel at the back of the bunch, planning the day's campaign perhaps for when the final climb comes. Not too worried about the breakaway as it was developing up the road. We now had Cassar, Nicky Sorensen, Cancellara and Thor Hushoff. In fact, the time out was called, everybody taking what the riders call a natural break, including Lance Armstrong. They all came back into the field. Meanwhile, up front, they were racing into the town of Kensingen, which was the second sprint of the day, 125 kilometres done. Hushoff taking 6 very valuable points there, closing in on the green jersey Tom Bonen, who has spent the day riding some 3 minutes behind the main field. They did try to chase him down from Robbie McEwen's team, but they failed. And McEwen here now has been spending a lot of time amongst the cars, picking up drinks and generally having what he would call a day off.
Day off, I think, for the sprinters, because they haven't really got a chance of showing how fast they are until next Friday, once we get out of the mountains.
And as we look down on the race there now, the peloton all together, apart from that one breakaway, we can now bring you right up to date with live pictures. In fact, the race moments ago just crossed the frontier. They are now racing back home on French soil. Just under 50 miles to go. The big obstacle of the day is once they start to climb away from the Rhine Valley. There's no hills at the moment. They're running along the Valley Road, the river never too far away. Latest time gaps, 3 minutes 15 to the main field and over 5 minutes to the green jersey of Tom Bonen. Now remember, he did complain, we heard him complain yesterday about a bad back, injured in a crash. It looks like he's taking it pretty bad today, Paul. 3 hours, 10 minutes. The riders have been away today now, and they're at time gap with Lance Armstrong's yellow jersey safely back in the pack. No one here just now. It's Nicky Sorensen who is highest placed overall at 2 minutes and 1 second, and he sits in 20th place in the overall classification. This might have a little chance. There's the Rhine as we run straight along the valley now, heading for the final climb of the day. The main field then are all together. The gap is there. I make it about 78 kilometres still to race, Paul. And as I say, the best man in the breakaway is Nicky Sorensen, 20th overall at the start this morning. There's been a few dropouts, though. Sadly, Paul-Christophe Mangin, who nearly won in Nancy and instead crashed into the barriers, didn't start this morning. We knew that. He was still feeling the effects of the crash. Surprised about Sergei Gonchar. He's also a non-starter today.
Bit of a surprise for him, and out on the road, one of the men who went down in that crash towards the end of the stage, Isaac Galvez, went down as well. So did Sylvain Calzada, who's been suffering since the start of this race. very much from this tendonitis. I think I just caught a quick glimpse there of Jan Ullrich taking a nature break.
Well, he's well known in this area. May have been stopping to meet some friends. Who knows? As we watch the race move away. So the situation at the moment then, the field all together with the exception of a small group containing Tom Bonan, who is off the back of the race today, and this small group just in front. Timeout taken at the back now. I don't think the breakaway too concerning to this ride at the back. Lance Armstrong not too worried at all. Only Sorensen up there won't be viewed as a top contender in the mountains. We've just entered French soil now, which puts us in the region of 78 kilometres to go. We're now into the high Rhine as we leave the base Rhine, heading up towards the Col de la Schlucht. There's Lance looking okay, so is the whole field here at the moment. The race goes on, the pace is going to get hotter. See you in a moment.
The 2005 Tour de France on OLN is brought to you by IBM, helping companies innovate in an on-demand world. And by Infinity, designers of the most dynamic automobiles in the world. And by Mitchum, with you all the way.
Well, you're back again just in time for the sprint here, and that was Salvatore Camesso. It was a little bit of a sprint, but no big serious effort here. The last sprint of the day at Eelhausen, 69 kilometres left to race. Well done, Salvatore, says Fabian Cancellara. They speak the same language, though they come from different countries. And it was quite a serious effort originally from Cancellara, because he wanted the small time bonus, I think, of 6 seconds. He gets 4. Cedric Vasseur was the rider who went over in 3rd place. Now back in the pack after a long chase, Tom Bonan and yesterday's breakaway hero Fabian Weckmann both have got back. They had to shut down a deficit of 3 minutes, but they're safely in the pack at the minute. This is Nicky Sorensen out there. Well, let's just have a look at the current situation, especially in the King of the Mountains now, because having won 4 climbs on the trot this morning, Michael Rasmussen did what he intended. He went out in the lead and he got the polka dot jersey. We look here at our Lenovo special categories competition. He's done Rasmussen. Tom Bonan is the green jersey. He's back in the pack today. Not a lot of action for him as far as that goes. Lance Armstrong, of course, is in the leaders in yellow. The best rookie, Jaroslav Popovic, you've also seen him busy talking to Johan Brunel. But the big news today, Michael Rasmussen, the new leader when he gets to the finishing line in the King of the Mountains. There's the main field. Phonak just keeping control of the front because they've got a man in the breakaway just now. Nikolai Jalabert. And Eelhausen is where we are. There's the sprint result confirmed. Camesso getting in ahead of Cancellara. Well, they're saying it was Fletcher here, but it looked like Cancellara to me. And Cedric Vasseur was 3rd. The peloton then, 6 minutes 36, Paul, is the gap now for the peloton. That's nosing up quite rapidly.
Nosing up very rapidly, and I can see a different team moving to the front here to try and whip up the pacemaking. I think everybody realizes Discovery Channel have absolutely no interest at all, Phil, in chasing down this breakaway. And it's kind of a game of poker they've played since 1999. They've allowed other teams to come forward, and in fact the reason they've allowed the other teams to come forward is because they basically know that other teams in the race want to win stages.
Well, there's the peloton, 6:34. I'll give you the names again. I was getting the Cancellars mixed up with the Fletchers there. It is Vasseur, Fletcher, Commerceau, Peter Wienen, Nikolai Jalabert and Ronnie Schultz are now the leaders after a very good attacking day. This might be a breakaway which will take some bringing back, but it is quite a long climb, the Col de la Schlucht, and it takes us to over the top at 15 kilometres to go, and a very good descent if you're in a small group.
I would agree with that. It has to be a small group, because in a large group it would be rather precarious. Armstrong won't be too worried about it. In fact, this is one of the few climbs, I think, on the whole of the race route that he's not been to see. He is not too worried about it. He spent a lot more time looking at the climbs of the Alps and the Pyrenees. This is his teammate, Jaroslav Popovic, a man who many tip as the heir to the throne of Lance Armstrong. This young man is only 25 years of age, but he's already finished 3rd and 5th overall in the Giro d'Italia.
Interesting to see that Armstrong is keeping a tight rein on the peloton here with all of his riders around him. Leaky Gas also got riders up here, which is equally as interesting today as they're working together on the front here. There's Magnus Backstedt, got a great second place yesterday, and lives in Wales in Great Britain now, married to a Welsh lady, Megan. So as they now continue to make their run, the field all together. All right, well, as the riders are on their way, I think we can now take a look at things that go on behind the scenes of the Tour de France, brought to you by IBM. This is the backstage pass, the team car.
The team cars, they are the nerve center of each team. War rooms on 4 wheels, constantly communicating and changing strategies. On the outside, the cars look like an avid cyclist going for a day trip. But on the inside, it's a different story. Talk about high tech. There's a GPS system, a monitor to watch the French coverage of the race, 3 radios, one for the official race coverage, one to go between cars, and one to go to the riders, plus 2 mobile phones constantly going. Here's a list of all the riders in the Tour de France so the director sportif and staff can constantly check who is who, the route profile, front and center. The team cars also serve as mobile equipment rooms.
Yeah, not only have we got the tools, the spare wheels, all the spare bikes, but we also have all the spare stuff in the back for the rain, spare drinks. Basically, we've got everything here for the bike riders.
While the team fleet usually consists of at least 10 vehicles, only 2 are allowed on course. One for the director sportif, the other is filled with technicians, doctors, and support crew. A rolling command center.
Thank you, Kirsten. That was our IBM backstage pass, and oh, what a great time in the team car that would be. Back with the action now in the Tour de France, and Leaky Gas taking an interest here now with Discovery Channel. Virtually all of Armstrong's team here just sticking behind these 3. 40 miles to race to the finish, the gap at 6 minutes and 8 seconds. And the next obstacle on the menu will be the climb of the Col de la Schlucht itself. That will come at 216 kilometers into the stage today, and right now the riders have 64.4 kilometers still to go. Lance is still in the sun, but so are we at the finish. See you in a minute. Welcome back. The Tour de France heading towards the first climbs, big climbs of this year's race now. It's the Black Forest is just ahead of them as the field and make their way towards them. The gap is just over 5 minutes. It's a nice healthy advantage still. These very pretty towns without the decorations in this region have really done a good job now. All the flowers in full bloom. The chateaus are all around us, and this is now the beautiful Black Forest. Ribeauville is the town in the valley down there, and 61.5 kilometers, 56.7 kilometers, 35 miles are still to go. This is the Chateau Saint Ulrich, and that might be ominous today. This is in fact Jan Ulrich's favorite training area, because he comes over the border from where he used to live in Germany, in Merdegem, and trains in the Black Forest region. He now lives in Switzerland, of course. 35 miles to go, Ribeauville down in the valley. And we've lost the riders, so we'll stay with the village instead, I think, at the moment. But the gap today is still running at just over 5 minutes. All right, while we're looking at this lovely little village, let's remind ourselves, with courtesy of Bank of America, where all the Americans are in today's stage of the Tour de France. First and second for the Discovery Channel boys, Armstrong and Hincapie. Julich stays 5th. There was no change yesterday. Floyd Landis is at 18th. Levi Leipheimer, 26th. We expect these boys to do well. Freddie Rodriguez did a great job yesterday leading out Robin McEwen and delivering McEwen into first place, his teammate. Chris Horner there in 82nd, seen riding near the front yesterday, so he's feeling good. And Dave Zabriskie in a spot of bother right now. He's just been dropped by the peloton. He's in a 159th position. So that's the standings of the Bank of America. American riders in the Tour de France. Magnus Backstedt on the front here for Leaky Gas. I've got a feeling that Stefano Garzelli, who is Leaky Gas, has told the boys to try and reduce the advantage. He might have a plan today. He might be the man to pick, you know, to win.
He could be a good man to pick, because actually he's the kind of rider, he's a very good climber, but he's an excellent descender, and he's probably thinking that most of the sprinters are going to get eliminated on today's climb. And he's the kind of guy from a group of 40 or 50 men who could come up with a surprise and get himself the stage win.
Racing to the town of Mitelvier, 55.5 kilometers. or so to go as the riders here now feel the sun. That have been so lucky today. We have been deluged at the finishing line over the other side of the Col de la Schlucht. They have raced in the sun, and now it looks as though the weather is taking a good turn for the better. Chance to check on the heartbeats today. Cedric Vasseur, who is in that escape at the moment, had a maximum of 192 in the escape. He's currently beating at 152. And the lead continuing to come down, Paul, 442 now.
Well, Cedric Vasseur, they're working at around about 75% of his maximum, but he's actually working at 90% of the level where he would start to go into the lactic acid threshold. And it goes to show that he's trying fairly hard in this breakaway. But in the main field, you get a chance to see that one or two guys are actually pretty much cruising along, because Kjell Karlström, his heart rate is only 133, and that's an indication that he's taking it fairly easy.
Well, if he's in the pack, of course, he's not catching the wind. It's not too difficult for these athletes at this level of racing. Stopping back here for a little word of advice, Cedric Vasseur, taking on board the bottle, checking on what's going on, who's doing the chasing, does it look good or bad for us? At the moment, debatable. I'm not sure whether it looks good or bad. They are losing some of their advantage, and the climb has yet to begin as they race a little bit closer to it. So there's Peter Wiening in the orange jersey. The grimace there on the face of Nicky Sorensen. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher driving on, and there's an interesting picture, a picture of white storks there. You don't see those very often. They don't fly much further north than this. They're an African bird on migration at this time of the year, and getting ready to nest, I would think. In fact, he's chosen where he's going to stay for the weekend. 4:41. Here's the breakaway, still clear. Cedric Vasseur back in the action now. Deserves something out of this tour. He's ridden very well so far for no reason, no victory, no money, but he's often been in the moves. But the way the chase is being conducted by the Leaky Gas boys, 4 minutes 38 for them. It is continuing to come down quite quickly now. I think the best thing that can happen to these leaders is that they get onto the lower slopes of the Col de la Schlucht. By my reckoning, they are about 4 or 5 kilometres from starting the climb seriously up the hill. And then they'll be all the way on it for 16 or so kilometres to the summit. So while we look at Salvatore Commesso, let's join Frankie Andreo on Bike Beat as he takes a look at the Discovery Channel bikes.
During the first week of the Tour de France, there's a lot of worry about staying in the front of the group and not crashing. But for the Discovery Channel cycling team, it's also about conserving as much energy as possible, because the Tour de France is 3 weeks long. So we caught up with Scott Dobert from Trek to explain to us how the Madone 5.9 helps the Discovery boys conserve as much energy as possible.
This is George Hincapie's Madone 5.9. This is the bike he'll be racing in the early stages of the Tour de France. These early stages are usually flat and fast, so aerodynamics play a pretty crucial role. What we've done with this frame is we've given it some aerodynamic shape. So the down tube here has a little bit of a hump to it, and the seat tube here has this aerodynamic shape. This helps the rider save energy through the course of the day or the early part of the tour. In addition to the shapes of the tubes, we have an aerodynamic wheel set here. This is a Bontrager Aeolus wheel set. This deep section helps wind pass over the wheels, and then it also has a low spoke count. There's only 16 spokes in each of these wheels, so these are pretty efficient. In addition to that, we've put our harmonic damper in the end of the handlebars here. It looks like this, and inserts in the bar there, and then this damper absorbs vibration that the rider would normally be feeling. So by putting this in here, the riders feel a little bit less of the road, and they're less tired at the end of the day and less tired at the end of a 3-week stage race.
Thanks very much, and that was Bike Beat. As we now continue with the Tour de France on the highway with those Trek bikes very much in action here. We're back to the leaders, but the gap continues to fall at 4:34. Juan Antonio Fletcher, I think, has got a much more serious look on his face now, because I think he really wanted to get to that mountain and see if there was a possibility. There's the beauty of the Black Forest now, this region not far away from Germany, but we're back home in France. We'll see you again in a moment. There we are, this lovely town here of Hérodmer. It really is a pretty town. The Tour de France has never been here before for either a start or a finish, but today they're coming. But they've still got to go over the Col de la Schlucht and then make a pretty hairy descent down into the town for the finish. There is a massive crowd here at the finishing line. You wouldn't expect it from such a small town, so it's, I think every hotel was full last night. 4 minutes is the gap now with those 6 riders still there. It's coming down, though, as we speak. It is coming down, 3:59. Let's just have a quick journey around France and get our locator with the map brought to us by Mitchum. As you know, we're now Sunday tomorrow. We will finish 2 weeks tomorrow in Paris on the 24th of July. The last time Lance Armstrong will race a bicycle. But for today, well, he's racing down on the German borders from Pforzheim. With 80 kilometres to go, we've crossed over the border. We followed the Rhine here after a little bit of a hilly start. Then we swung in over the borders, and now that's where we're headed to via the Col de la Schlucht. We've had the first 3 category climbs at the beginning, and that's given us a new leader in Michael Rasmussen. And now we're heading to that final climb. We're just on the lower slopes, which is not officially part of the climb. There's the beautiful view in a beautiful area. We're in the region of the Black Forest in the Vosges Mountains. 3 minutes 55 seconds and counting. I'm not sure they're going to even reach the bottom of the climb now, because this team is very, very serious here to set the pace. 2 teams working hard. 3 riders from the Leaky Gas team, 4 now, and also 2 riders from Bouygues Telecom, 2 riders from Illes Beliers. And when you get teams getting together like that for different reasons but for the same intention just now, it's unlucky, but I don't think they'll survive.
It's going to be very difficult because there's a couple of teams there who've got ideas of their own, especially the teams of Illes Baleares, team of Alejandro Valverde and Francisco Mancebo, and of course the team of Liquigas, the Italian team in the lime green jerseys. They're thinking about Stefano Garzelli.
Cedric Vasseur tapping out the rhythm, 1 stage win in his career. And keeping it going nicely just for the moment, Nicolas Jalabert. And yes, he is the younger brother of the famous Laurent Jalabert, who's now a television commentator here for French television, having been a great animator of many Tours de France over the years.
Great aggressive bike rider as well, Jalabert. Jalabert, one of those few rare riders capable of being competitive at the start of the year in February and also still racing hard in October. Only men like Sean Kelly and Eric Zabel in recent years have really seemed to be able to do that.
That's right, there's the flotilla of cars behind the leading 6 men with 40 kilometres to ride. Well, at least the sun's above the riders here now, as the riders still packed together here and waiting for the start of the climb now. That gives us a chance to show you the Honda highlight of the day. Watch the centre left of your picture. There's the railway track, and ouch, that rider there lost his back wheel. Nasty fall, 2 riders down, and the others fell in sympathy to the right. Lance Armstrong slipped up the outside and missed everything as usual. Then there was another crash. Alan Davis was playing for this overnight, and the judges relegated the blue jersey rider centre left to the back of the field, but the win went to Robin McEwen, 2nd place to Sweden's Magnus Backstedt. That is your Honda highlight of the day. No change in the peloton of the Tour de France. Now we've got the Bouygues Telecom riders doing their little bit of pacemaking while Leaky Gas take time out just behind them. You can see everybody else isn't interested at all. They're just watching them, seeing how things are going along. The speed, of course, is rippling uphill now, so the pace is not as violent as it has been over the last 7 days of racing. And there's the main field. They're heading towards the Col de la Schlucht. Lance Armstrong, we'll have a closer look at his season before the Tour de France when we come back. He's having a great year, although he doesn't race too much. We'll take a break. Welcome back. The breakaway's still there, but it's beginning to look a little bit tenuous now. We're running out of seats in the house here to watch the Tour de France. We'll have to bring any seating we can find around the route. Here comes the main pack now. They are closing in. The roads are getting narrower. We've swung away from the valley road of the Rhine. We are now heading up into the Black Forest, and very shortly the race is going to see the leaders. I think it's just about 3 3/4 minutes. After 3 hours today, very, very good average speed despite the early start in the hills. 29.2 miles an hour. This could well be the fastest Tour de France we've ever seen by the time we get to Paris this year. There are the 6 men of the day trying to get to the Col de la Choucte first as we ride into the town of Gunsbach right now. Well, as we see the race going there, we don't know yet who's going to win, of course, but there is plenty for you to watch here on OLN. Don't forget the ride of a lifetime. Catch OLN's expanded coverage of this stage tonight. The day's recap, the rider interviews, expert analysis will all prepare you for tomorrow's ride in the mountains as well. It's OLN's 2005 Tour de France expanded primetime coverage tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that is 9 p.m. Pacific time. Enjoy it here on OLN. Meanwhile, back in the peloton here, this is the Elis Beliris boys now. The lead is down to inside 3 minutes. Anyway, let's remind ourselves who might win today's stage. Here's a Capital One profile on Alexander Vinokourov.
"32-year-old Alexander Vinokourov is one of the most intriguing riders at this year's Tour. Hailing from Kazakhstan, he rides for the great German T-Mobile squad. His most successful season as a professional was back in 2003. That year he won the prestigious Paris-Nice race, only a few days after the death of his friend and fellow Kazakh Andrei Kivilev. Then exactly 40 days later, which is the traditional period of mourning in Kazakhstan, he won the Amstel Gold Race, dedicating both victories to Kivilev and claiming that he rode with the strength of 2 men. That year he also won the Tour of Switzerland and a memorable stage at the Tour de France where he finished 3rd overall. In 2004 he was considered a main favourite to win the Tour de France, but just weeks before the start he broke his shoulder and was forced to miss the event. This year he's back with a vengeance. He's already won the oldest race in the world, the Liège-Bastogne-Liège Classic, and there is no doubt that he'll want to make up for his lost Tour in 2004. In stark contrast to his T-Mobile teammates, Vinokourov relies on emotion to perform. He'll challenge the contenders at all costs. He'll go on the attack whenever he sees an opportunity. This may leave him at odds with his team and weaken the alliance of the big 3 at T-Mobile, or it might just be what is needed for the team to turn around and topple Lance Armstrong.
There we are, that was our Capital One athlete profile for today. Alexander Vinokourov, the magical man from Kazakhstan who's now the national champion for the first time, having won the title just 2 weeks ago. He's 31 now, perfect age to win the Tour de France. Been a professional since 1998 and a stage winner in the Dauphiné Libre race this year. That was a great win, and he finished 3rd, of course, his best place in the Tour de France in the year 2003. I've forgotten who the winner was at the moment, but he got 3rd place anyway. Back with the action now, and the skies miraculously have been following the riders with sun all day, and it's now reached the finishing line in Jaromir, so I don't think these riders are going to get wet at all today, which is rather good news, because the descent of the Col de la Choucte is going to be extremely dangerous if it rains as they come through the Black Forest. This is the breakaway. It is inside 3 minutes, the gap now, as we're heading up towards the big climb of the day, the second category climb of the Col de la Choucte. I wonder who's going to attack first. We're going to know pretty soon. See you in a moment.
It's the most historic event of the summer. The cyclism returns to OLN. Lance is going for a record 7th win, and OLN's team of cycling experts have the inside track. Every morning, Paul Sherwen and Phil Liggett take you minute by minute through the live action. Each night, get expanded coverage with Al Troutwig and Bob Roll as they break down the leaders and preview the next stage. Plus, exclusive updates of Lance's Ride of a Lifetime. Witness Cyclism 2 Tour de France, live at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. Expanded coverage at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on OLN. Brought to you by Trek Lucky No. 7 Sweepstakes.
On these slopes now of the Col de la Choucte, the main field is splitting up all over the place. Stuart O'Grady has just been dropped now. There's a real pressure going on at the front of the race, and I'm just wondering who he's doing. It's going to take a while to get through there to the leaders. Fabian Cancellara also in a spot of bother back there, and they've come onto the slopes, Paul, 2 minutes 12 seconds behind the leader on the climb, which is Peter Weening. He's gone forward. Here's Robbie McEwen now. His day is done. He'll ride to the finish. It wouldn't surprise me if he gives us a little smile here. He knows where his place is in the Tour de France.
Talking to Robbie McEwen just yesterday after the finish, he says, mate, I'm on holiday right now until next Friday.
Well, Fabian Weckman, he had a big day yesterday. It's told on him today. He's also been dropped. It'll take a little while for our cameras to get through to the group doing all of the pacemaking. Dario Herrero is the Euskaltel rider there in the orange jersey as we race on up the road, watching just who has been left on these slopes now. 26 kilometers to go. We've got De Abas Herrero and Michael Rick, the big German rider, world champion, former world champion, but that's not in the hill climbing department. And there's your answer. It's the riders from the Eolis Baleares squad, the team of Alejandro Valverde, who have taken control at the front.
Actually, it's rather strange to notice, Phil. I can't see any pink jerseys there, the team of T-Mobile. I wonder if they're holding back. They should be looking to ride at the front end of this group because there's serious pressure being put on this first proper climb of this year's Tour de France.
Well, they've not had a good season. They hardly won a race in the first few months when they've usually had a hatful, and it looks as though that bad form may be continuing here. This is the remnants of the breakaway, by the way, because that is Cedric Vasseur. As these riders are Nicolas Jalabert and De Schultz, these riders have gone backwards on that initial attack. So it must mean that Juan Antonio Fletcher is up the road here with a couple of others trying to control Peter Weening.
Actually, just what you were saying about T-Mobile was interesting because they didn't get a victory this season until the month of April.
No.
And the man who did it for them?
Their old man.
Alexander Vinokourov.
Absolutely. Oh, I beg your pardon. I was thinking of Eric Zabel. Zabel winning in Germany, I think. But there we are. As we look here at Fletcher, Comesso. I'm surprised Salvatore Comesso has hung on. He must have some great form this year.
Well, don't forget, this is a man who's been two-time Italian national champion. He can turn on the class on a number of occasions, but this young man is an incredible revelation to us here at the Tour de France. Only his second year as a professional bike rider, but now riding the Tour de France for the first time. He launched an unbelievable attack as soon as the road tilted upwards.
Well, Weening is a big surprise to us, so we don't know him that well because this is his first Tour de France. He's now been given the big nod to ride with the top team. He's come through the development squads of that great sponsor from Rabobank for Dutch cycling. This is Nicky Sorensen, the man that started the move originally, is on his own at the back of the chasing three with Salvatore Comesso there in second wheel. So as we look now, a little bit of picture breakup with the leader. The trees will affect our coverage a little bit there, but we won't lose the pictures, believe me. It looks as though Juan Antonio Fletcher is beginning to find his legs. Now the climb is getting a little bit steeper. He's closing the gap, I think, on Peter Weening. But the main field, my goodness me, they're closing in too, and the steep section is yet to come. Confirmation of time gaps, 21 seconds to the three riders chasing Weenan and 1:57 to the main field containing Lance Armstrong. Weenan is 101st in the race at the start today, 5 minutes 25 seconds behind the American, but he's making some ground over an awful lot of riders now because, Paul, that big pack, the peloton, what would you say riders-wise, about 40?
Not very many, 40, 45 riders possibly, and that's all because of the pressure that was put on initially by Liquigas, the Italian team, but then after that, the pacemaking was taken over by Il Baleares, who literally left half of the field at the side of the road, all the sprinters gasping for breath. And it just makes me remember what Lance Armstrong said to us a couple of days ago, Phil. There are a lot of tired bike riders in this field.
Well, there is the peloton right now, I think, from the helicopter. And looking down there, we've got just a handful of riders. Armstrong's down there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in line in the yellow jersey. And the pack now, it's fast tempo climbing this, and that's the way it's going to be. If you can't match the tempo, you are slung off the back of the group. Levi Leipheimer, where is he? Coming back, I think. Now, I can't believe he was dropped. He might have been coming back from a problem, but he is coming back anyway.
I would think he had a mechanical problem, and it's a difficult time to have it when the main field is splitting to pieces on the slopes of a climb. We're looking at around about 7 kilometers to the summit of this climb. That's going to take them at speeds like this, which is quite remarkable speeds on the slopes of this climb, around about, I would say, something like 9 or 10 minutes.
Christophe Moreau has hung in, the rider in green there. This is the man who's surprising everybody. Nobody would have picked this name out of the hat for victory today. Peter Weening, first Tour de France. He's now getting a full crack at the major Rabobank team. He didn't wait. As soon as the roads kicked up, he was gone. He split the breakaway up and he spread eagle them down through the Black Forest.
And he's opening up a pretty smart advantage over the 3 chasers. It's hovering between 22 and 25 seconds, but it seems that the main field are not closing it down quite as rapidly as they were before, because the main field is only 1 minute and 50 seconds back. And if this man can get over the summit of the climb, Phil, with 1.5 minute advantage, I don't think they'll see him again.
Well, you know, you could be right. I can't see they're going to take too many silly risks on the way down. The good news is the sun is with us all the way to the line now after the torrential downpours at the finish area this morning. There's Juan Antonio Fletcher, and he's trying to do what he can here, and I have to take my hat off to Salvatore Camesso. He's willing to work here, and he's looking as though he's riding on very, very good form. There's the main pack, still chasing here. Well, this is the main field, being led by Elis Baliris. Behind, as you can see, you've got all of Lance Armstrong's team. Even the rider in white is one of his teammates. That's Jaroslav Popovic in the best young riders competition. White jersey for him. Armstrong is there, keeping an eye on everybody. Quite content to let the Elis Baliris boys set the tempo, though.
He doesn't want to race today. He just wants to observe, I think. It was interesting to know. This is Cedric Vasseur, who's just about to get caught. He was in that early morning breakaway of 7 riders. I noticed in 3rd place it was Il Falco, and he's the man who is regarded as one of the best descenders in the world. Paolo Salvadelli just going through there. I wonder if he'll try and steer Lance Armstrong down this very dangerous, precarious descent.
A very interesting question indeed. A little bit of picture breakup now on Peter Weening, but we're okay with the chasers. These are the chasers, and they're not catching up, are they? They're racing for 2nd place at the moment. Juan Antonio Fletcher. There's the boys coming. Are they going to get back in the race before the end? Well, we'll find out very soon. Welcome back as the riders still on the climb here, and this is the catch of Ronnie Schultz and Jalabert. Nicolas Jalabert, who was in that breakaway, slipping gently back into the snapping heels there of the peloton, becoming a very select band today. And that's Schultz there at the head, who's just been swept up as well. So we're in a situation now where there are only 4 riders ahead and 5 kilometers to climb. There are 3 of them. The other one is Peter Weening, who is still trying to hold them all off, and he's riding superbly right now. As we look here at the leaders, well, these are coming out of the front of the group here. Vinokurov, the little terror, is in 3rd place. He is looking for the move now. This could be where he is planning an attack. And look at Lance. Lance Armstrong is not going to let him out of his sight this time. Vinokurov, the acceleration has forced Armstrong to come out and play.
Well, that's Salvadelli trying to nail down the gap. Armstrong not panicking, but Vinokurov true to his word. He really is the dark invader, isn't he? He's looking to try and see if there's any weakness in Armstrong's armour.
What a super bike rider. He's always taking the race to himself, and haunting him just behind there is also Jan Ulrich. Here comes an attack now from Christophe Moreau. They may not chase him with such enthusiasm.
Well, they're not too worried about Christophe Moreau as he goes inside of the 20 kilometre to go banner, because he's a man who... Now, another move here by Alexander Vinokurov. He's going again.
Just what he wants, somebody else to draw the sting, and he's gone. And this time, no. Forget it. This time Lance has reacted like last time.
This time it's Armstrong himself in person chasing everybody down. And look at that. They've caught the group of 3 riders who are halfway across the gap. And I tell you what, it looks as if there's a little bit of daylight there in between Alexander Vinokurov and Lance Armstrong. He's taking his time to pull this one back.
Well, Juan Antonio Fletcher has had the legs to try and join in there. He's jumped onto the back. The others have gone off. But Christophe Moreau joined by Alexander Vinokurov. What a great bike racer he really is. He's not going to take defeat lying down at all. Armstrong is very, very wise there. He may have lost 19 seconds on the road to Nancy, but he's going to mark that boy now.
Yeah, but Big Jan is there as well. He's right on the tail of Lance Armstrong. You can just see the pink jersey moving up. He's being very attentive. And there's a rider moving in there from Il Baleares. I think that is Mancebo.
1, 2, 3 to Armstrong, 4 to Ulrich. Ulrich knows these climbs. He trains in them, or has trained in them during his maturity years. A top bike rider. He's not living too far away. Armstrong, it's already looking like a very select little group, this. And all of the hard work by Il Baleares, that'll be Valverde, who is in fourth wheel.
They really have scattered this field. There's a couple of riders from Team Phonak now trying to come and scramble across the gap. Well, it's great to see Alejandro Valverde covering these moves, and that is why Il Baleares was so aggressive. He's a good bike rider, Alejandro Valverde. He's 3.5 minutes down in the overall classification. I'm sure they won't chase him down.
Well, they certainly have shut off. Lance certainly hasn't chased him down because Lance wants to keep the two riders there. But look at Vinokurov, gone again. And immediately Armstrong forced to react. He was watching there, Jan Ullrich and Vinokurov, saying, well, boys, you're doing the riding today. I'm doing the following. Which one of you is going next? Here comes Vino straight over the top of Valverde. This is Alejandro Valverde's first Tour de France. He must think they do this every time they come to this race.
He's on a fast learning curve here at the Tour de France, Phil. He's come here for the first time. I was amazed when he won a race in Paris-Nice in the start of the season. It was the first time he'd actually won a race outside of Spain or Portugal. But he certainly has. There's Cadel Evans moving up there as well. Now this is another move. Now this is Andreas Kloden. Who would have believed that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have believed it because he was riding so badly in the Dauphiné Libéré, and this has got to be a tentative. I can't believe his form has become from nothing to absolutely magnificent in 12 days. But at the moment, Kloden has found his legs, and up comes the reaction. And the rider from Rabobank there is Denis Menchov, who's gone forward as well.
Well, Kloden a fair way down in the overall standings, almost 2.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. He started the day in 24th. We talked about the triptych, the trio of riders who could attack, and Armstrong now being attacked by Basso. Everybody seems to want to go up the road.
Basso has gone. Armstrong is watching them sprint around. He's still sitting by Jan Ullrich. Not sure he's getting such a good idea now. Ullrich is going to have to catch up as well. This is an amazing showdown. I never expected this on the climb today.
You know, this is the only way they're going to beat Lance Armstrong, to launch attack after attack, just keep going. But he's actually pretty cool here. He said, right, Big Jan wants to win this Tour de France as well. I'll just sit on his wheel and see where he's going to go.
Well, Lance has got about a dozen riders in front of him here, and he's watching every one of the moves. Santiago Botero has just hooked up at the back there. As they're all getting back into this, Michael Rasmussen, the new leader in the King of the Mountains, is tagged on the back as well. Could even score points on this climb. Andreas Kloden, remember, as far as I know, we haven't passed Peter Weening yet. He is still ahead on the road. The camera's watching the action here. I can't believe that Weening, we've got no time check on him, is Savard. There he is. He's still ahead, but he's got to be caught shortly because those flurry of attacks behind. They must be close. The lead car has gone by and they must be right behind.
But Phil, you look at his pedaling style here when he's rocking the top half of his body like that. That's an indication there's not that much power left. He is really suffering. Look at the difference in his style to the style here of Andreas Kloden, who I cannot believe is coming to form at the right time. And look at the gap that he's got over the group behind. He starts the day 2.5 minutes down on Lance Armstrong. These three riders from T-Mobile are going to attack from now all the way to Paris to beat Armstrong.
Well, this has to be a surprise. I'm not sure Lance will have written this one into his calculations, in all honesty, because Kloden hasn't looked to be going well. He must have done a lot of work for the last 10 days before the Tour de France. 25 seconds is the difference now between Kloden and Peter Weening. Weening must be in the last 3 kilometres of the climb, and Lance is still deciding to mark just the attacks of Vinokurov and Ullrich if he goes.
Well, he knows when it comes down to the time trial down towards the end, he's got a big advantage over riders like Andreas Kloden. He can give this man a minute or so when we go into the final time trial and still beat him. There's a slight reorganization here as we look at the group behind. They're starting to reform, but T-Mobile came out today with a plan. They wanted to launch the attack. The man who set it all up is just about halfway down there in the turquoise jersey, the champion of Kazakhstan, Alexander Vinokurov. But I tell you what, nobody, I don't think anybody in this field expected a move to come from Andreas Kloden.
I'm absolutely certain they didn't. Here he is. He's still looking quite frisky as well. He's still got to pick up the leader, of course, Peter Weening, as we come towards the top of the Col de la Schlucht. Then it is going to be a very, very difficult descent now, because these boys are going to turn the pressure on going downhill. Andreas Kloden, who finished so far behind, you needed binoculars in the Dauphiné on 1-1-2, all of a sudden is off the front in the Tour de France.
Unbelievable. He looked like a sack of potatoes in the Dauphiné Libéré. He rode like a sack of potatoes, but right now I think he's peeling off the front.
Well, there's a huge crowd come out to this mountain, as you can see here, and they've been waiting to see the main peloton. They've cheered a man they probably didn't recognise. Here is Peter Weening, making a little name for himself today in the Tour de France. I am wondering if he was meant to soften the riders up before their new signing, Denis Menchov, because Rabobank have never been a team to race for the final yellow jersey before, but they've got in Menchov a possible winner if things go his way, and he's in that group now, which we'll call the Armstrong group. Here it is.
Gil Balear is still thinking about the victory, but this is quite a big group now. We're 1 kilometre from the summit of the climb, and we will be then faced up with a 10-mile descent down to the finishing town of Gérardmer.
And just look at this man. He's going to get the points at the top, the double points, 20 for the winner today. Not sure how that figures with the overall, but good for him as he rocks and rolls his way up with 10 miles to go, or 16 kilometres. This is a big moment in this rider's young life. Well, probably a big moment in that chap's young life too. As we now look at Kloden, second on the mountain, heading up towards the summit.
And he looks good. His pedaling style is smooth. He looks comfortable on the machine. All he's going to face himself up to now is a very rapid descent. A bit of confusion at the front there. All the motorbikes want to get the first shot they've had of this man so far this season, because he's never really been at the front end of the main field anywhere apart from a stage of the Bayern Munich Rundfahrt.
Look at this man. He's tongue locked into the right-hand side of his mouth there, concentrating, eyes just staring at the summit and giving himself a feeling they are drawing me in as we go underneath this little overhang here. And as that group is, funnily enough, is getting bigger rather than smaller right now, so they may have slowed down a bit. This will be good for the leader.
If they've slowed down, Phil, it's only a fraction, because look how long that group is. The pressure is really on. The attacks are coming again thick and fast. It really is a lot of pressure. We can see here the man just coming out of the back of the group, Juan Antonio Fletcher. Not really a surprise. He was in the breakaway nearly all day.
Paying for the price, but he's nearly at the summit and may descend quite well. And Kloden has gone on. He's going to try and outsprint him. He didn't know he was coming, and he's going to really kick himself for that, because look at that, 10 metres from the line. Kloden is over first.
And Kloden is going to be the polka dot jersey leader of the King of the Mountains classification tonight with 20 points. And Rasmussen, I don't think, will be too happy about that.
No, because he would have thought he'd done enough today, and it's all swung around. Well, I can't believe that. The man who was second in last year's Tour de France, showed no form at all this year, is now the next man in the polka dot jersey, and looking rather good just now. The two riders over the top together. Now it's full bore down to Gérardmer.
Well, I tell you what, their advantage is not very much over the top of the climb. Race radio just crackled through and gave confirmation that the lead of those two riders was only 15 seconds, and that is not very much.
It is certainly not very much, as we see the two leaders have gone through now. They'll probably stay together. Let's see how they descend. It's not an immediate drop off the top as they now begin the way down.
Just caught a glimpse of the group. They're only just behind, maybe 100 metres. It's not a lot. This man, Andreas Kloden, though, has certainly made the move today. T-Mobile have come to the Tour de France this year, Phil. They are dedicated. Brad McGee's on the front of the group.
Brad McGee has made it. Vinokourov, Floyd Landis swings off. He's also here. That's a good decision. Alejandro Valverde. They've shut down again. These are the men beginning to shadow box. This helps the two leaders. Here comes another move from CSC. They're smarting today. They made a lot of moves.
Bobby Julich followed there by Cadel Evans. They want to try and pull it all back together. This is a big battle here. The first big battle of the Tour de France so far this season. There's Cadel. Oof. Bobby Julich nearly went straight back into his wheel.
And that's not what we want to see. Cadel Evans again brought onto a new team here for him to try and get them an overall leader, as he left the T-Mobile team. In fact, here comes the catch. They're all going to come back into the nest here and have to live to fight away on the descent.
Well, Andreas Kloden has really lit the fire here at the Tour de France this afternoon. Matthias Kessler is the T-Mobile rider straight up towards the front. But I'm a bit surprised, Phil, to see the lack of Discovery Channel riders in this group. They seem to have all disappeared from the front of the race.
Well, in fact, Michael Rasmussen has taken 8 points on the climb, Paul, and that might keep him in the lead.
It will keep him in the lead. That'll give him 24 points at the end of the day. So he was being very attentive to the action that was going on at the front. Andreas Kloden now is about to get caught. Peter Weening has done a great ride here this afternoon. He won't lay down his arms just yet, but this is a descent you have to be very careful on. It's pretty tricky, and it looks quite as if the road has actually dried out.
Well, just look at this now as they get themselves nicely tucked into the descent here. This Peter Weening is a man with a bit of class, I think.
He certainly wants to keep going. He will continue to... In fact, they're starting to open up the gap once more. Peter Weening now has got Andreas Kloden with him. They'll take all kinds of risks on this descent. They're using the motorbike, and it's quite an interesting way that these professionals will use the motorbike. What they do is they actually look at the brake light on the motorbike to get an idea just how fast they can go into these corners. Pretty risky, eh?
Very, very risky, and we're topping speeds here now of probably 70 to 80 kilometers an hour, and they're still pedaling just on 12 kilometers down to the finish, and they're working together here one-on-one. And you know, these boys might take a little bit more risk than the big heads of the Tour de France, because they've no reason yet to chase everybody down. There's a huge day tomorrow, don't forget, when we go through the big mountains of this region. And there they are. This is a very select bunch here, and the Australian Cadel Evans has made the selection here. A lot of people were talking of him as a likely stage winner today. Well, it could be the case yet.
It certainly could be the case. And now this again is the big risk here. Look at them using all of the road. Peter Weening accelerating up to the wheel there of Andreas Kloden. This is a daredevil descent.
Just looking here at an incredible descent here. We're on the way down to the finish now as we run into the last 6.5 miles of road, and it'll all end in Gérardmer. Look at this, just as he promised, he's been attacking. Alexander Vinokourov never lets you down. This is a great race. Who's going to win? We'll be back for the big finish. Stay with us.
Sometimes the spoils of success do nothing but spoil you.
Wow, this time Bontrager Race X-Lite wheels.
Bissell lift-off vacuum cleaner. Not even my Maganga can help me.
Never mind Bob. You can be lucky enough to win Lance's gear every day of the tour. Play Trek Lucky 7 Scratch and Win at your local Trek dealer and online at trekbikes.com. Every day could be your lucky day, so scratch and win with Trek.
There it is, 5 kilometers to go, or 3 miles to the finishing line. Kloden rode up the mountain well to catch Weening, but now I think he has to be the stronger of the two now to try and hold off the chase. Here comes a move from Elis Baliers, I think it is.
That's Mancebo moving down the outside. He will try and pick up the pace if he can. It's 8 seconds at the 5 kilometer to go mark, and Francisco Mancebo on the front there has now decided he needs to pull those riders back into the fold. He's obviously been asked by Alejandro Valverde, go to the front, whip up the pace, because I can win this for Spain.
Well, we know that the majority of the top Americans have made this split. Certainly Armstrong is here. We haven't seen Hincapie, but I'm pretty sure he would be here. Bobby Julich is here, so too I think is Levi Leipheimer, but not too sure about that one.
And Floyd Landis, I caught a glimpse of as well. Yes. So most of the top contenders for the overall race have made the junction in what has become a very select group of riders here. But Il Baleares under a bit of pressure trying to pull it all back together. But I think everybody in this group knows, Phil, that in fact, you look at that gap, it's now starting to extend a bit more as we look at 2.5 miles to go to the finish.
They've stopped chasing, in fact, and this is because they're now they feel that they've attacked each other. They haven't got anywhere with the attacks. They're now consolidating. Their gains are sitting together. They might be letting a dangerous man come back into the Tour de France here, though, with Andreas Kloden driving.
They could be, and I tell you what, there's no real organisation on the front of this group. We're now looking at around about 3.5 kilometres to go. Here comes a move by Jens Voigt, it looks like.
Who else would it be? We expected Jens Voigt, but we felt he didn't have a chance of winning today because of his currently high overall position in the race, and he certainly caused a ripple of excitement because they're on him straight away. Now they're looking at one of the game. We reckon about 30, 35 riders in this group. Not sure if any of the riders can sprint like we normally see a bunch sprint, but we're certainly going to be treated to a good winner today. Will it be one of these two here? Inside at 3 kilometers to the line, they are still holding.
They've still got a chance because there is no organisation in that group behind. Not one single team has come to the front to organise a chase. And I just caught a glimpse there. I think it must have been Michael Rasmussen of Team Rabobank trying to slow them down a fraction. The group of the yellow jersey is now at 17 seconds, race radio is telling us, but they are flashing up 28. So I wonder what the truth is.
Well, either way, they're not caught, and that's all we need to see at the moment as Elis Balira still tries that. Valverde, by the way, also another good man who can sprint when it comes down. And Michael Bogart is also there. He can finish well. 2 kilometers to go now. Just 2 kilometers. They'll just drop into the town for the finish. It is actually very slightly uphill, and they level only on the finishing line. That could be crucial today.
They've got a great gap there into the area where the barriers start now. They will be feeling they've got a good chance. Another move here. This will be Pereira trying to lead it out. Just behind him you can see Francisco Mancebo. Armstrong has got a couple of teammates up there, but you can see Alexander Vinokourov not too far back.
Well, they're also at 2 kilometers now. It is about 22 seconds, they're saying on race radio. 22 seconds. I think that might even be enough here because of the hesitation at 2 kilometers. These two can't afford to hesitate. They're going to have to race one-on-one when they get to the line. They cannot slow at all.
Well, Peter Weening can. He can actually sit on the back wheel of Andreas Kloden because he knows Kloden wants to get the 20-second time bonus. Weening has been away for an awful long time, and what he needs to do now is try and catch his breath a fraction because this is going to be the most important sprint of his career. If they start jockeying for position like this, Phil, that group is going to come back. There's the red kite, 1,000 meters.
And there's the little rise which takes them up to the finishing line in the far distance here. Well, this is a skillful tactic by the rider from Holland. He's learnt an awful lot in just a week in his first Tour de France. He stopped working with the leader. He's going to just wait and take the risk of them catching up. Kloden is racing for time. He's thinking of the future in the Tour de France. Wienen is thinking of about 800 meters in the Tour de France. And that will be his first ever stage win. And I'll take my hat off to Kloden. He's not made any effort to force the other rider through.
No, he knows that what he's got to do is ride for time. It's so important for him this afternoon. He's going to move himself up. It's 30 seconds back to the main group. So it's one of these two riders is going to win the stage.
They've got it. Now, Wienen is obviously going to come out of the slipstream. He'll be the fresher of the two. He made the move right at the base of the Col de la Schlucht, and he stayed away until Kloden stole the prize off him 10 meters from the top. And now he's forced the German rider to open up the sprint. He's going to have to wait. Oh, has he got it? Look at the look in his eye. He's got this. He'll move round him at the very last minute. Which side's he going to go? Now here he comes. His first ever victory in his first ever... Oh, did he get it, Paul? I don't know.
Well, that's a photo, Phil. That is a photo. Side by side, those riders were as they came across the line, and I don't think either of them knew who got the win.
Jörg Jatsk on the far right of our picture here. Cadell Evans on the far left in the red jersey. Vinokourov is looking for the time bonus. There's a third place time bonus at stake as he starts to come out and attack. Here, Christoph Böller comes on the right, Valverde, and also Jens Voigt, and he's been washed away. Vinokourov, I think it's going to be Valverde who gets third on the line, and a very small time bonus.
A very small time. There's a quick glimpse there of the yellow jersey coming in. Lance Armstrong home and safe, and this is the rest of the group. Jaroslav Popovic is in this group. And this is one of the riders from Boyka Telekom charging up to the line, trying to get himself the minor placings of the day. But looking back in that group, they have lost themselves a fair amount of time here this afternoon.
There'll be huge time gaps spread across the field today because of the speed that they climbed right up that mountain. Top speed split off a lot of tired riders. And then after that, of course, they just ride home. And we're still awaiting the result of that photo finish. We haven't got it yet.
This is Laurent Brochard coming in. I just caught a quick glimpse of the mullet there under his helmet. There you can see the guys behind are not too worried about this. All they're worried about is getting themselves to the line at the end of the day.
Well, Brochard is a little bit down. Not a good result for him, former world champion. As almost his teammates right on his back wheel there, led on by Jerome Pino, just behind his teammate Brochard on the line. There is Gerard Mer, and there's the polka dot jersey, be worn tomorrow by Michael Rasmussen, who had to really work hard on the last climb to consolidate his lead he gained in the early part of the day.
With Sylvain Chavanel from Team Cofidis on the front, and he's obviously going to lose himself a little bit of time. He thought he would be a challenger for the overall race here, but obviously he's left himself a few minutes out on the open road, and you can see a lot of riders in that group, Phil, bearing the consequences, some of the early season crashes. And here is the winner. I think we're being told that here is the winner of the stage.
As we're watching the riders come in, we can see that from our position it looks as though it is going to be Peter Weening. We're very excited to see the photo, but I think he's got it because he's been taken away to the presentation area. Boy, that's a result for that guy, because that was a fabulous finish. He almost left it too late, but it wasn't. He's only 24 years of age as well, Peter Weening. First Tour de France, and he's a winner. Well, they're actually just confirming on the computer here that the victory has been given to Weening, but it must have been very close indeed. It was all down to the lunge for the line. He lost the Col de la Schluck in the last 10 metres, so he made sure Cloden lost the stage in the last 1 metre. What a result. Well, as much as we know, nearly all of the major contenders finished in that leading group of riders who sprinted it out for third place. I don't think anybody was really left behind. We'll get a chance to see when we look at the full results. Welcome back as we take a nice look here. Our Trek aerial view brought to you by Trek Lucky 7 Sweepstakes. We're looking right across the beautiful Black Forest here, down into the valley and the lake of the finishing town today of Gerardmer. There are other ways in, but they all come over cols before you get down into this town. We chose to enter it by the Col de la Schluck, and it was a great race. Well, let's go down to Frankie Andreu now. He's down at the basement, and he's got with him a certain Andreas Cloden.
Andreas, fantastic ride. An incredible effort on the last mountain. Did you realize that Armstrong was in trouble on that final climb?
Yeah, I think Armstrong was not in trouble, but we was 3 guys, and Alexander Vinokurov attacked again, and then Lance come back, and then I go in the attack, and okay, but it was a good race, but I think a second place.
A fantastic sprint at the end. Did you think you guys were going to be able to stay away? It seemed like the peloton was coming very, very fast.
Yeah, but I think I must work a lot. The Rabobank, okay, he's damn real, but it's okay.
From the start of the day, was T-Mobile's plan to attack as much as taking turns attacking as much as you did on the final climb?
Yeah, we say we look, and we have good legs, and when we have good legs, we make the attack.
All right, thank you.
Well, I guess it's always a bonus if you do have legs in the Tour de France, but we didn't think he had any in the Dauphiné when he finished many minutes down on the Ventoux. As we now wait for further news here, as we look across, there is the podium. Here he comes, a little leap for joy. Peter Weening, 24 years of age, on top of the winner's podium in his first Tour de France. And what a day to choose here. He broke away with the group, he left them on the climb, and he managed to beat the man who finished second in last year's Tour de France by the narrowest of margins. And I think it's gone down to the opinions of the race referees at the end of the day, because the finish was that close. Salutes a lovely crowd here in Gerardmer. It's a long time since we've seen a rider quite as tall as him win a stage like this. It takes him back to the days in the 50s. A brilliant French cyclist by the name of Gerard Saint. Sadly, Gerard was killed in a car crash when he would have developed into one of the best bike riders in the world. He was a great climber for his size. And there's the finish. The determination of this young man. Oh, it was the lunge that did it. It's all it could have been. And that was where he made the attack down at the bottom of the climb. Only Cloden could reach him. As we now look at the Nike general classification, Lance Armstrong keeps his lead, of course, but we have a new second place now. Up comes Jens Voigt, 1 minute back. Alexander Vinokurov stays third at 1:02. Bobby Julich is fourth now. Ivan Basso is putting in an appearance. Looking further down, Jan Ulrich is out of the depths of despair and up into 6th place. Carlos Sastre, a winner in the mountains a couple of years ago, is 7th. Hincapie goes down to 8th. Nobody will be too worried about that, least of all Lance Armstrong. Andreas Cloden comes in 9th place at 150. And Floyd Landers had a great day today for Phonak. He's also in the 10. So we'll take another break, and when we come back, Big Lance will be speaking to us. Don't go away. Welcome back to this lovely town of Gérardmer. We're tucked away in the mountains of the Black Forest. Tomorrow we have a real tough day. Make sure you don't miss anything tomorrow, by the way. 2 hours extra live coverage. So you'll have to get pretty early over in California to stay with the tour tomorrow. But today has been a super day of racing, and out of the woodwork has come one great bike rider, Andreas Kloden, while on the other hand, this man just watches it all happen and pulls on yet another yellow jersey. Number 71 in history, I think, Paul.
Number 71, he's getting slowly but surely closer to that second position, just behind Bernard Hinault, and strangely enough, it's Bernard Hinault just behind him.
Well, they're pretty good friends. They talk occasionally, but Lance Armstrong today was under attack. He never showed any signs of cracking, but Alexander Vinokourov tested him. He came out trumps. He must be a little concerned about the sudden return to form of Andreas Kloden, because he rode superbly today and is now up into the top 10 in the classification, I think.
I think we were pretty surprised by the performance of Andreas Kloden, because 2 weeks ago, Phil, you never could have predicted that.
No way. Let's have a look at the Nike general classification, and we'll find out where he is. Armstrong is first, of course. Voigt comes in at 1 minute back now in second. Hincapie wasn't in the split today. Alexander Vinokourov holds third at the same 62 seconds, because in the end he finished in the same time. Bobby Julich continues his great tour at 1:07 in fourth, and Ivan Basso, who was third last year, is now riding high in fifth. As we look further down, Ulrich is out of the depths of 12th and up into 6th. There is George Hincapie down to 8th. Kloden is now in the top 9 at 1:50, so he's still very much a threat. Floyd Landis had another good day today. He is sitting in 10th place and best of his team. Significant that, I think. 1:50 for him. Looking at the top 15, Vladimir Karpitz rode well. The rookie of the tour last year is now the new leader by a second in the white jersey competition. Yaroslav Popovic slips down 1 place to 12th there in that competition. Santiago Botero is 13th. Leipheimer did well today, 14th. Jose Acevedo at 2:35 is in 50th. Have we got another one? Yes, we have. Well, a bit surprised to see Yoshiba Bolocchi up there in 16th, but there he is. So Pereiro is 18th, and Roberto Heras sits in 20th place. Going to be a great day tomorrow. Let's go to Craig Hummer with Lancey.
Lance, it was only a Category 2, but it certainly seemed to bring out the chess game today. What was your mindset as you first withstood and then brought back those attacks by Vino?
Well, I think we all knew that was going to happen. At least we had a strong suspicion. It's tough on a climb like that. That's 4% average, and the speed's very high. A lot of guys can stay on, so when you keep 20, 30, 40 guys there, then they're able to alternate attacks. And, you know, for whatever reason, I was left alone. We just had a bad day as a team, and that makes it that much harder, having to cover some moves by the moves by yourself. So we have some talking to do tonight amongst all of us, not just the guys, but I didn't feel great either. So you know, sit down with Johan and see what the problem is.
When Kloden finally ended up going, like you said, you were isolated at that point, but was it a question of losing the battle in your mind to win the big war?
Well, for us, the two danger guys there are Vino and Ulrich, so you have to pick your fights, and you know, you can't cover them all. And in the end, fortunately, you know, I was even thinking that ultimately somebody's going to take up the chase here, Balyaras for Valverde or somebody else for the stage win. So they did on the downhill.
All right, well, tomorrow's another day. We'll see you then.
Yeah, thanks.
Interesting conversation, that one, Paul. I'd like to be a fly on the wall at the dinner table tonight.
There'll be some interesting discussions, and I think the first time Armstrong admitting that he actually wasn't feeling all that great today, which is strange because since the start of the tour he said he feels good, he's had the best form of his career, and now all of a sudden this is what can happen. You can have a bad day. You always deserve to have a bad day during the Tour de France, and if that was his bad day, I don't think he'd be too upset about it.
It's very often the first day in the mountains, change of tempo, and it hurts the legs, and I think it's fair to say a lot of riders have a bad day on the first day in the mountains, but they come good in the second day. Boy, we'll find out tomorrow.
Well, we better find out the whole of next week, because we've got 3 big alpine stages as well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tomorrow, I think, is a much more difficult day because we go that little bit higher, and we've got that big climb towards the end, the Ballon d'Alsace. Armstrong, I think then will be looking for a lot of support from his team. They were very absent today at the final few kilometres of that ascent.
That's true. Where was Savadelli? And Popovic popped, dare I say, and lost his white jersey lead. Hincapie couldn't hold, and normally he would ride on a hill like that alongside Lance. Let's have a look at the King of the Mountains jersey. There's how it stands tonight. Good job Rasmussen picked up a few points on that last climb, otherwise Cloden would have got it. He actually got 16 points, Rasmussen, as it's turned out on the final climb. That was a great result for him to keep the King of the Mountains he gained early on today. He actually said he was going to win the King of the Mountains lead today before the start, and in fact since then he's also said he intends to win the competition in the absence now of the now retired Richard Biron, and he's had a great start today. Michael Rasmussen of Denmark has given Rabobank a little bit of a double here, the lead in the King of the Mountains and of course the winner of the race with Peter Weining. That was a fabulous ride by both of them today. So there may be no champagne on the Discovery table team tonight, but you can bet your life there'll be a few bottles popped on the Rabobank table.
Absolutely. I think Rabobank will be pretty happy with their Tour de France so far, because Decker's had the jersey, so's Carsten Kroon, and now it's on the shoulders of Michael Rasmussen. But Rasmussen has actually said before the start of the Tour de France that is his major goal. I think the stage win today was a bonus for those guys, and I have to say hats off to Weining, because he attacked a long way from the finish, about 28 kilometres from the finish, but 15 kilometres from the summit of the climb. That was brave.
It was. All right, well, Tom Bonan came in, by the way, all smiles alongside Robbie McEwen today, well outside the points, well inside the time limit. Fortunately, there's the current standings. Hushoft closed in to 5 points behind because he won one of the 6-point competition sprints out on the course, which was good for him. So he's still very much in the frame. So too is Robbie, you know, at 96. If he hadn't been declassed in that third place, he would be level with Hushoft now on points and very much in that race too. It's been a great competition today. What I'm beginning to enjoy about this Tour de France is there's no obvious winner yet, even if Lance is the race leader. Let's have a look at the presentation of the green jersey. Tom Bonan, I know he's trying here to get his back into play because he did hurt his back. He spent a lot of time with massage last night and a day in the mountains with a bad back. And Paul Sherwin's got one, so he'll tell you it really does make cycling very unpleasant. But he's still in green, albeit by just 5 points. And Hushoft can score in the mountains. He's a very strong rider. Advantage Hushoft may be in the next couple of days.
In the next couple of days, it's going to be very difficult for Tom Bonan going through the Alps as well. And I think the rest day on Monday is going to be arriving just about on time for Tom Bonan to try and get himself back. At the start of the Tour, he looked unbeatable. Now it's looking precarious.
It is, that's true, you know. Tomorrow, don't forget, I keep reminding you, 2 hours extra coverage tomorrow, and stay with us right through the day for what will be mountain after mountain in these beautiful hills here. And we're going to see some terrific attacking racing, because quite clearly now the riders aren't afraid anymore of Lance Armstrong. They're willing to take him on. And here is one man here who was the best white jersey last year, Vladimir Karpitz. By a single second now, he's taken this jersey away from Team Discovery, and he's taken it away, of course, from Jaroslav Popovic, and that'll be another part of the discussion in the team hotel of Discovery tonight.
Actually, I think that will be quite a good move, because they've taken a bit more responsibility away from the team. They've got to reconcentrate on one thing at the Tour here. It's not stage victories, it's nothing else except trying to make sure that they are all there to look after Lance Armstrong. So maybe it wasn't a bad thing losing that white jersey to Vladimir Karpitz.
Takes the pressure off.
It also brings another team in to help you work on the flatter stages, and we did see a lot of work done today by Il Baleares.
They were the rider to get Valverde the stage win and the small bonus. That would have lifted him up into the top marking positions, you know, because he's got a bit of time to make up as Alessandro Valverde, but he's a very, very strong cyclist. Now, Lance has found today his team weren't so good. They slipped away a little bit. He had to mark the moves himself. You can't chase everyone. Even a superhuman Lance Armstrong is human in the end. So he chooses the many marks. He marked Vinokurov and he marked Jan Ullrich. The others could attack and he could not react.
Well, he had to ride very tactically. Once he'd seen that he'd nailed all the attacks coming back from Alexander Vinokurov, once Andreas Cloden went, he made the decision of keeping his eye on two riders, Jan Ullrich and, of course, Alexander Vinokurov. But if that scenario repeats itself day after day in the mountains, it's going to be pretty difficult, and that's quite nice down there. Look at that, L7, Lance, 7 victories. Well, today it wasn't looking quite as certain as it was a few days ago.
No, I think it's made for a very exciting Tour de France, if you ask me, Paul. We're receiving news, by the way, that it was about 2 millimetres, the official winning distance today for Weining over Andreas Cloden. So that was a very, very good win for him. All right, well, as we look down on the lake here in Jeremar, this was just a little hors d'oeuvre as what's to come tomorrow. OLN's exclusive coverage of the tour continues with stage number 9. The high mountains are with us now. We'll be with you live tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Expanded prime time coverage will begin at 8 Eastern and 9 Pacific. You are going to enjoy one terrific day of action, because I really believe now the rivals of Lance Armstrong are going to think he could just be fallible, and he's going to be under attack tomorrow.
He'll be under attack tomorrow. A lot of riders will have taken heed from that, but don't forget, he's been in situations like this many, many times before, and he always bounces back. The team will bounce back and rally around him. I'm absolutely certain of that, but it is setting itself up to being a great week in the Alps.
And throughout his 6 Tour victories so far, Lance has always said he wants the best riders to be here. He wants the spirit of the competition, and he's certainly got that now. Just watch this lunge. I think it's 2 millimeters officially, which is no distance at all, but they've given it to the rider on the left. That is amazing, isn't it? A young man, 24 years of age, a stage winner in the Tour de France, and all hand is still in the yellow jersey. Well, we're not done yet. We'll take a short break and come back and enjoy this extremely interesting stage of the Tour de France. We'll see you on the other side in just a moment.
Well, here's the photo finish one more time as we welcome you back to our coverage of Stage 8. It looks like a virtual dead heat. Phil Liggett mentioned something about millimeters. Here's the official photo of it. I don't know. I don't see any millimeters there. But the bottom line here, Bob, is that is a significant decision for Lance Armstrong, because you get a 20-second time bonus for first, 12 for second. So that was an 8-minute swing. And who knows where Andreas Kloden's going to be as this tour develops.
8 seconds difference between Kloden winning the stage and being second on the stage, plus the time that he established between himself and the peloton, which was right around 20 seconds or so. So that was a pretty big deal for Andreas Kloden to get in the breakaway. But maybe those 8 seconds will play out as the race goes on. We'll have to see.
Now, we had Lance's coach with us earlier in the day, and if you heard, he was explaining how, at least between he and Lance, they wanted to use a different gear in the flatlands before the mountains, and Lance was the only one on Discovery who was ready for that climb. The rest of his team finished about 3 minutes back. I counted 5 or 6 riders in that pack. Clearly, either physically or for whatever reason, they weren't prepared to be part of what happened so importantly later on the climb of Category 2.
Absolutely. The physiological differences between riding on the flats at high speed in a big gear, completely different from climbing up the big mountains, the big hills of the Tour de France. No one on Discovery was ready for that except Lance Armstrong, and they were really in bad trouble there for a little while because Lance had no teammates and lots of other riders attacking. That's the last place you want to see Lance Armstrong if you are Johan Brunel, the Discovery team manager.
All right, if you didn't think this was thrilling, you might want to think about the Food Channel or something, because this was spectacular cycling. It all started when Peter Weening broke away from the breakaway to take charge of this stage. What a fabulous day for Rabobank. They win a jersey and they win a stage, and about as dramatically as possible. Now the peloton starts percolating and bubbling with thoughts of catching both the break and the remnants of it and keeping an eye on Lance. Right there on the right is Alexander Vinokourov. Lance Armstrong couldn't have mentioned his name enough, and at this point, Discovery is still there protecting them.
Azevedo's still there, but that disintegrated as they went up the climb. Azevedo, Rubiera both dropped. Only Paolo Savidelli, the only man who could match one of the accelerations by Vinokourov. Lance followed the wheel of Savidelli until he swung off, and then it was up to Lance himself to cover the rest of the attacks. Vinokourov, a quick look back, sees Lance Armstrong being brought back to him by Savidelli. Savidelli swings off. Now Lance has got one last guy, Savidelli, but this attack by Christophe Moreau puts Savidelli in big trouble now. So with just a few kilometers to go on the climb, Lance is by himself. There's the attack by Vinokourov that unhinges Savidelli. Savidelli, you can see him pull off there. Now the Kazakh man, who we thought would attack today, everyone picked him to attack. Lance had to counter those attacks himself. He saw Valverde go up the road. Lance doesn't have to worry about that too much, but look at Ulrich right on his wheel and right on Lance's shoulder, Vinokourov. Vinokourov will go again. Lance will have to counter that. Ulrich getting into the mix himself. Lance just looking at Jan Ulrich. There's an attack by Floyd Landis, Jörg Yak, everyone taking pot shots at Lance Armstrong. Bobby Julich up there in the mix. Chris Horner also for Saunier Duval. A great day by the American Chris Horner on the Tour de France, finishing in the top 10 on the stage. Lance Armstrong looking for the next attack, and where it comes from the other side of the road, Andreas Kloden, the tall German with a big revelation in last year's Tour, finished second in last year's Tour. Horrible spring, not racing well at all. Maybe he was hiding a little bit of something throughout the spring, and he's brought everything to the Tour. That was a great attack. Kloden catches Peter Weening, the Dutchman on the Rabobank squad who had been out on the attack all day. Weening made a good job here to get to the wheel of Kloden just at the top of the King of the Mountain there. So Kloden getting maximum points. Now it's a sprint to the line. It's never pretty when two climbers sprint against each other, and Weening just barely getting that by the width of a skewer. Unbelievably exciting sprint, and 8 seconds taken away from Kloden because of that sprint.
But an overall gain of 39 seconds.
Yep.
Now, the one thing that comes to mind for me, it was like one of those Three Musketeer movies where there's only one musketeer and he's taking on like 6 enemies, you know, and he's dealing as best he can, somehow keeping them off. The bottom line is the depth of T-Mobile that we talked about was on full display today, and the depth of discovery surrounding Lance was not. Was he vulnerable, or was he up to the challenge? Obviously, he was up to the challenge, but what about the vulnerability? Was it really there?
Well, you have to worry about that if you're Johan Brunel. You've got to have a couple of guys on a Category 2 climb, 20 Ks from the finish, be able to stay with Lance Armstrong throughout the whole Tour. Having one bad day, just think if Lance had a flat tire and it took Johan a way to get up there, a ways to wait to get there to change the wheel, that would have been incredibly dangerous. Lance, so dynamic, so perfect as a bike racer, knew exactly what he had to do.
You heard Lance tell Craig Hummer they had some things to talk about. What is there to solve over the dinner table exactly?
Well, I think it's just a question of hoping that now that the first long climb of the Tour is underneath the riders, in their satchel of pain, so to speak, that they can have a little bit better sensations in the legs. 2 big climbs on tomorrow's course. Discovery has to ride a little bit better than that if they want to keep Lance Armstrong in the yellow jersey.
Well, if you like that Category 2 climb, how about a Category 1 and a Category 2 and a host of Category 3s tomorrow? From Gérardmer to Mulhouse, still in France and heading south to the Alps.
You can see here we're still going to the south towards the Alps where the gigantic mountains of this Tour will commence. But there's some very tough climbs out on the course, brought to you by Mitchum. Col de Gros-Pierre, Col de Gramont, those are smaller ones along the course. And then one of the first climbs ever in the Tour, Le Grand Ballon, and then the Ballon d'Alsace before they get to the finish. 2 category climbs out on the course. Very tough stage tomorrow.
And because of those early climbs and what could happen on them, we want to make sure we're all over it in our Tour coverage for 2005. And finally, the arrival in Mulhouse, and after that, a day off. Here's what we're talking about.
This is what I'm talking about. Le Grand Ballon, Le Ballon d'Alsace, and those are the 2 big monsters out on the race course. 171 kilometers tomorrow.
Tomorrow, we will join you beginning at 6:30 a.m. on the East Coast. Just stay up if you're on the West Coast. Expanded coverage in prime time, of course, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time every night on the home of the Tour, OLN. Let's talk about this a little bit. What do you think we saw today as far as the profile tomorrow, where the big attacks come? Do you go early, or do you save it for that one big Category 1 last?
There is a long, gradual descent off of the last climb, and actually quite a few kilometers before the finish. If you're Lance Armstrong, you decide how your team is doing. You might be a little bit worried overnight, because if they cannot chase down the early breakaways that are going to come, then it will be a long day. Isolated Lance Armstrong in the front of the peloton. We'll see if that happens. Discovery has to ramp up their game a little bit tomorrow.
All right, Lance was a lone superhero today. The team's going to have to get their act together. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, Stage 9 should be memorable, and we still have the Alps and the Pyrenees to look forward to. Some of the early images of what was a sunny start in Germany, making their way to the Vosges Mountains. And they did play out like mountains. Clearly, Lance Armstrong picking out those in the peloton that he wanted to watch their every move. Our OLN team, outfitted by LL Bean. Go to llbean.com. And for more on our tour coverage and all of our programming at OLN, go to olntv.com. Up next on OLN, the countdown of the 25 most dangerous places. With Bob Roll, Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, Frankie Andreu, Craig Hummer, and Kirsten Gump. This is Al Troutwig. Tomorrow, Stage 9, Destination Mulhouse, and more mountain climbs. Clearly, Lance Armstrong, as he expected, is the marked man for everybody.